All right, so today is the last class, and we'll pick up mid-August with the high holidays after that, and the liturgy of the high holidays. So, let's see, who do we have here today? Small group so far.
Hi, Bev.
Hello, Beverly. Hello, Gail, Jerry, David, Leslie, Bob, Sewell.
Thank you, right here.
Okay. I'm going to wait one more minute and then I'm starting. Whoever's here, let's do it. Hello, Joan. Apparently your iPad is here.
I just wanted to tell you that I really enjoy your classes.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been fun. It's been a good journey through the Siddur. And I think each time I teach it, I'm adding more and more material. So it also challenges me to do a little more in-depth looking at things. So it's good. All right. So today is going to be a little bit different. We're looking at Hallel today. And first of all, this is a brand new lesson. I have not taught this before. I can tell you a couple things. Number one, we will not get through all of Hallel today. We're going to deal with we'll deal with about half of it or 2/3 of it and the larger picture issues. Two, it's biblical study more than it is liturgy because it's all it's Psalms. Essentially, Hallel consists of Psalms 113 through 118, 6 Psalms that are recited on joyous occasions. Hallel is said at the following times. Each of the 3 pilgrimage festivals of Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot, at Hanukkah time, and on Rosh Chodesh. All right? So those are the 5 occasions in which it is said. Is also added to the Passover Seder at night. If you go through the Haggadah, the Psalms of Hallel are included in that text as well. That's the large picture. There's also a half Hallel, where we skip parts of 2 different Psalms, which is recited on Rosh Chodesh. The Rosh Chodesh, you only get a half Hallel because it was introduced at a much later time than the major holidays. Recitation on Rosh Chodesh, because of that, is custom, not law. The other occasions, it's all law. Rosh Chodesh, it's a custom. As a matter of fact, in the 11th and 12th centuries, both Maimonides and Rashi objected to saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh because it wasn't legally demanded. Nonetheless, that's an argument Rashi and Maimonides lost, and it's kept its place in our Siddur on Rosh Chodesh. They don't lose a lot of arguments, particularly when they both agree on something. All right? This one they lost. We have no Hallel said on Purim at all. Okay? Despite the fact that there is this miraculous salvation, there's a couple reasons why it's not said. Number one, for any of the lesser holidays, in other words, those that are not Torah holidays, they're biblical like Hanukkah and Purim, but they're not Torah holidays. They happen post-Torah times. All right? If it doesn't occur in the land of Israel, there's no Hallel. That's been the tradition. And the other issue is that even after the victory of Purim over the enemies, nonetheless, the Jews remained subjects of the Persian Empire. After the Hanukkah story, they gained their freedom and were running things in their own land, and they were in control of their own destiny. One question, then 1 second. In Purim, they didn't. They were still subjects of the Persian Empire. Yes, Leslie, you need to unmute.
Is it because also God is not mentioned in the story of Purim?
That's also, yeah, the rabbi's drash on it. Absolutely, he's not mentioned. As a matter of fact, some of the great Bible scholars, H.L. Ginsburg, who taught at the seminary in the 40s and 50s, and a great scholar, basically said you can't take the story of Esther seriously. It's so farcical that God wouldn't even allow his name to be put into the book. So there's all sorts of drashes that happen with it. Okay, but that's a possibility for sure.
Thank you.
Now, in the religious Zionist communities, based on the instructions of the chief rabbinate, Hallel is recited on Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. Okay?
It started the way it did.
What's that? Oh, okay. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Hallel is not said at all, because the Talmud states, is it seemly for the king to be seated on his throne of judgment with the books of life and death open before him, and for the people to sing joyful praises to him? So the Talmud basically says we don't say it on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so therefore we don't. It doesn't seem to thematically fit. The other holidays are all referred to as Yom Simchat Torah, as a time of joy. On some level, the idea of joy is implied. That's not the message of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's a much more subdued message, and so Hallel thematically doesn't fit. What are the basic ideas, the themes that run through Hallel? The Talmud lists 5. The first 3 are our founding myths: the Exodus from Egypt, the splitting of the Red Sea, the giving of Torah. Those 3 are our founding stories. The last 2 have to do with end times, the revival of the dead, and the difficulties preceding the Messianic age. All right, so Exodus, splitting of the sea, giving of the Torah, Mechayei Amitim, revival of the dead, and the difficulties of the Messianic age. Those are the 5. In other words, Hallel deals with all of Jewish history from the birth of our nation to the establishment of the Messianic era. Those are the times in which we live between. Okay, we're all in this in-between period. I find the following a little bit comical, but I want to tell you the Talmud says it. Who's the first to say Hallel? The Talmud gives us 3 suggestions. The Jews at the Red Sea, all right, as if the Psalms of Hallel were written by that time. 2, Joshua defeating the kings in Canaan. Or 3, Deborah and Barak when they defeat and destroy the army of Sisera. It's a midrash. It's a midrash. But the rabbis want you to know that this has historical precedent. And so they take it and put it back into there. The same way you read midrashim that tell us that Abraham was eating kosher foods only. Highly unlikely. Okay? Structurally, what's significant to note is that all these psalms, some of them will say something like Tehillah David. They'll have an attribution that it was written by David, etc. None of these psalms have any attribution. There's no superscription at the top. And most begin and end with the word hallelujah. Okay? Hallel is recited standing, and it is surrounded by the brachot. Remember, we've talked about whenever there's a biblical section, we surround it with blessings, indicating in a sense that one is performing a mitzvah. You're fulfilling an obligation, not merely just engaging in an act. There's an obligatory nature to it. That is the intro to the Psalms. What I'd like to do now is begin looking at what the Psalms say. Let's look at the individual texts. And you may recognize some of them as we go along because we sing them. There are parts of it we sing and parts we don't. All right, so let's look at Psalm 113, which is the first one here. We're going to have a lot of reading today. All right, so if I ask you to read it, I'm going to ask you to read the whole Psalm, all of 113. So Bob, would you read us Psalm 113 in the English?
Hallelujah, O servants of the Lord, give praise. Praise the name of the Lord. Let the name of the Lord be blessed now and forever. From east to west, the name of the Lord is praised. The Lord is exalted above all the nations. His glory is above the heavens. Who is like the Lord our God, who, enthroned on high, sees what is below in heaven and on earth? He raises the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the refuse heap, to set them with great men of his people. He sets the childless women among her household as a happy mother of children. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. There you go. Both starts and finishes. Hallelujah. Again, I just want to point out, hallelujah is hallel, means praise, and Yah is God's name. So it's praise God. You always hear, you hear all these movies and whatever in Christianity, hallelujah, praise the Lord. All they're doing is translating. All right? It's the same word twice. Praise for God is what's underlying this, who is exalted above all the cosmos. Nonetheless, that praise should extend throughout the world because God is everywhere in our world. You'll notice that this psalm is pure praise. There is no hint of petition anywhere within it. It is all, God, you are terrific. Also, if you kind of look at it, you may see the possibility that it was recited antiphonally in early times, that one line was said by a leader and the second line was then responded to by the congregation as a response. If you look at it, there's sort of, it can be used in that way. Many of the Psalms are written that way, but you can see it here. The Midrash, again, we're playing with Midrash, suggests that this Psalm was recited in Egypt on the night of the plague of the killing of the firstborn. The rabbis say it's the first instance since creation in which anyone had praised God. Right? And why? Why did they say this in that setting? Well, the long enslaved Israelites praised God because when they were ceased to be slaves of Pharaoh and instead became servants of God. There's a moment of transition that's happening. And I kind of see it, I was thinking about this morning and it came up with it. It's a moment of transition in which it's sort of an early form of Shehechianu. We're going from what we're doing something for the first time. There's a transitionary moment. And so Hallel in this form, as the rabbis are creating this midrash, is sort of an early Shehechianu. Yes, Bob.
One thing that's disturbing is to say it on the God killing the firstborn. To me, it seems inappropriate that God is killing his own children.
Okay, so the lens you look at it is important, and obviously the rabbis recognize that in the sense that when we have we dip our finger and take some of our joy out of this. But at the same time, there's a recognition that the firstborn of the Israelites had been being killed, and now they're being spared. Okay, so yeah, all right. You got a little of this. It's why on Passover. It's one of the reasons on Passover we say the half Hallel for half the time. We don't do it the whole of Passover, a full Hallel. It's why we dip our finger. There's a sense of joy, but a recognition that life has been taken in process. All right, so I can't say you're wrong, and the rabbi struggled with it as well, but do you not celebrate your own survival also? And so there's that counterbalance that's at play. Look at verse 4. It says, the Lord is exalted above all the nations. His glory is above the heavens. The scholars of the Kabbalah note that these words seem to contradict the prophet's statement. The prophets say, Kvodo malei chol haaretz, that God's glory pervades the entire earth. That's what comes out of Isaiah, which implies that God is omnipresent rather than aloof or distant above the heavens. All right, Hallel seems to indicate here that God is above the heavens. He's out there, distant. The prophet says, no, God pervades the earth. So what do the rabbis do with this? They explain that although God's true essence is concentrated above the heavens, the influence and the power of God's glory radiates throughout the universe and pervades Earth, the entire Earth. But they'd say any manifestation, how they kind of get that God is beyond our comprehension, any manifestation of glory of God, which we behold on earth, is merely a reflection of God's glory, which is beyond the heavens. That we only get sort of a taste. It's a reflection. That God is so great as to be out in the heavens, but it beyond, nonetheless, it's so great that it permeates our earth anyway. That's how the rabbis find, when they find a psalm like this and says, God, his glory is above the heavens, how do they make sense of that statement? All right. Yes, Leslie.
But in the last verse of it, it says he raises the poor, brings them to the great men, sets the childless women. Those are kind of hand-on interaction with God and man. So does that mean he comes down from the heavens and works directly with people?
Either that or that's sort of this, there is an imminence that shifts. And we see that, we've talked about that in a lot of our prayers, in the Psalms too, where it shifts from God being out and Malkeinu, our king, and shifts to Avinu, to our parent. And it does shift here. So you have this transition. So this last section, as you point out, makes God's nature more concrete through social behavior. Okay? And the extremes are then located. What you've got here is an extreme on a vertical axis. God, the highest being imaginable, above the heavens, raises up the lowest of the human beings. It's very deliberate. So you identified something that was being conveyed here. All right. Just one other thing. Verse 7 is a good example, by the way, of biblical parallelism. Verse 7. Let's see, is he raises the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the refuse heap. He's saying the same thing. It's saying the same thing twice. That's a biblical format. Okay. The rabbis also, nonetheless, despite the fact that it's saying the same thing twice, they couldn't just leave that alone. They had to find an interpretation, and they said, raising the poor out of poverty is justice. Elevating them to sit as nobles, all right, to set them with the great men of his people, that goes beyond justice, and that's God's kindness. So verse 7 is justice, verse 8 is kindness. Okay, and then verse 9, he sets the childless woman among her household as a happy mother of children. This is mercy, because even though a woman is unable to have a child, God gives her the ability to conceive. And just like the poor in ancient society, the childless woman had no social standing. Okay? And what he's doing, what you've got here is an elevation of this poor childless woman, and this concept of the elevation of the oppressed and the lowly, not only to normalcy, but to a place of honor, is a recurring theme of Hallel, and probably explains why it got into the Haggadah. What is it God does for the Jews? He takes his lowly people and he doesn't just bring them to normalcy, he elevates them because he's bringing them to Torah. Okay? So what I want to do now, we're going to do this with each of the Psalms, I want to read it again. Okay, I want to read the psalm again with some of these insights and see if any of it has shifted or added meaning to it. Okay? All right, David Finger, you're up. So unmute and you read the same Psalm 113.
I'm sorry, I don't have the text in front of me. You please let somebody else read.
Not a problem. Gail, would you do it? You do need to unmute, though.
Okay. Hallelujah, O servants of the Lord, give praise. Praise the name of the Lord. Let the name of the Lord be blessed now and forever. From east to west, the name of the Lord is praised. The Lord is exalted above all the nations. His glory is above the heavens. Who is like the Lord our God, who enthroned on high, sees what is below in heaven and on earth? He raises the poor from the dust, Lift up the needy from the refuse heap, to set them with the great men of his people. He sets the childless woman among her household as a happy mother of children. Hallelujah.
Okay. I hope that makes a little more sense. You've got this full psalm of total praise, transition from God on high to a God who gets involved in the lives of people. There's actually a verse of transition. It says, "Who is like the Lord our God, who enthroned on high sees what's below." By the way, below includes in heaven. So God sits above heaven in this imagery. Okay? That's Psalm 113. Let's keep going. We got another psalm to play with. Jerry, do you have the text?
Have to unmute first.
There you go. All right, if you would read Psalm 114 for us.
When Israel went forth from Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of strange speech, Judah became his holy one, Israel his dominion. The sea saw them and fled, Jordan ran backwards, mountains skipped like rams, hills like sheep. What alarm you go see that you fled, Jordan that you ran backwards, mountains that you skipped like rams, hills like sheep. Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flinty rock into a fountain.
All right. So the first thing I want to say is when I get involved in with a Christian fundamentalist who tells me every word is literal, this is the first thing I cite to them. Really, the rams are skipping, the hills are skipping like rams. All right. Now I'm going to give you I'm going to talk to you about what that really means in just a second. But there's a lot, particularly in the verses they tend to quote. They will look at Isaiah. They'll look at later prophets. So you're talking about Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. You're talking about Psalms. Those are the verses they'll tend, which is all poetry, and one cannot take it literally. All right. However, that doesn't mean there isn't a message here. So let's take that apart. So the Exodus and its aftermath are celebrated not only as a liberation of Israel, but in this psalm, an event through which all of nature came to see the power of God. This poem is structured on events involving water. One, the splitting of the sea, the crossing of the Jordan, and the supplying of water in the wilderness. So water seems to play a major role here. There's a supernatural element. All of creation is participating in this process, okay? So let's take a look and take this apart. Number one, in the first verse, when Israel went forth from Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange speech, strange tongue, okay? Ancient peoples were categorized not by race, but by language. So one of the ways the Jews were able to stay connected in a concept, no matter where they lived, was by a common language. All right? And that's true lesser so today, but there is a commonality. With English and the internet, everybody at this point, most people in the world who have internet are in some way involved in English because it's become more common. But in the ancient world, language was the division. We have this constant phrase in our text, and particularly in the prayers, Bechol Lashon, all languages. Languages becomes nationality. And Hebrew becomes central as a result. In the next verse, you have here, Judah became his holy name, his holy one, his sanctuary, and Israel his dominion. And the rabbis see this sanctuary and dominion as suggesting two words which recall the revelation of God, that we are told to be a holy nation and a kingdom of priests. There is both a political nature to us and there is a religious nature to us. So you see here the first time the question is coming up, what's a Jew? And we don't really have an answer to that. Jews, you really can't say that Judaism is a religion in the same way that Islam and Catholicism are a religion, and Christianity a religion, because there's a peoplehood. We're also Am Yisrael. There's a peoplehood nation. There is a specific land that is core to us, the land of Israel, which is different than the other nations. We are a people of the land. That's our ultimate property, per se. Who is a Jew is being addressed right here. Verse 3, from east to west, the name of the Lord is praised. And then it goes on to say, I missed something here. I'm reading the wrong psalm, that's why. The sea saw them and fled. It didn't make sense to me. The sea saw them and fled. The Jordan River ran backwards. Mountains skipped like rams, hills like sheep. What you've got now is a description of nature in response to the delivery from Egypt. This is what, according to the text, when the Jews are freed, when we go forth from Egypt, all of nature is in some way responding. The two verbs that are used here, yanos and yiso, flee and turn back, belong to the vocabulary associated with battles and war. So in a sense, what you've got here is a recognition that we didn't have to fight a war against Egypt. God was doing it. And we know that these two verbs are common in the literature of the Near East about the warlike gods, particularly, by the way, in terms of weather. And you have God's shifting nature around here. Verse 3 again focuses on water. The sea is a reference to the parted sea. The sea parts, and the Jews in Moses' time walk through. The Jordan is the Jordan River. When the Jews enter the land of Israel, the Bible describes that the Jordan doesn't split, it backs up. It goes backwards. And then, you have, so that they can cross. So those are the two things that are happening here. Verse 4, mountains skipping like rams, hills like sheep. Earthquakes. And it is meant to be a reference to the Exodus experience. What happens at Sinai? Earthquakes. The ground is moving. There's loud noise, there's thunder, you have this sense of all of nature is disturbed at this moment. And so what you've got here is earthquakes. It's not mountains skipping around. Okay? Verse 5 then goes on, is this sort of the rhetorical question. What alarmed you? The sea and the river, what alarmed you that this happened? The mountains, that does all this happen? It's obviously a rhetorical question. It's like the psalmist is standing there in disbelief at what he's seeing, a shock over God's intervention that all of us would have if suddenly nature didn't operate the way it's supposed to and started doing the opposite things. All of us would have the exact same response. Now, in today's world, we have a little bit better understanding of science, at least in most of our country we do. Some people don't believe in science. It's a whole different ballgame. Political comment stopped. But nonetheless, if nature, if day didn't follow night and fall didn't follow summer, and the way we understood the world stopped functioning, if the sun stopped moving in the sky, as it's described in the Bible, we would all be shocked. Okay? And that's what you've got here, this feeling as expressed by the psalmist. Verse 7 and 8, the last two verses here. Tremble, earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flinty rock into a fountain. It's an obvious reference to Moses drawing water from the rock. God says to him, speak to the rock and water will come forward, and that's being referenced here from Exodus 17. What you've got in this psalm on a cosmic level is a statement that God has power over all the earth and can alter it as he chooses to do. Water flees, splitting of the sea. Water turns backwards as the Jordan. Hills and mountains are dancing earthquakes, and hard rock turns into water. Okay? Want to read it again now with the understanding we have. All right. Beverly, do you have the text? Yes, okay.
I do.
Would you read 114 again?
When Israel went forth from Egypt, the house of Jacob, from a people of strange speech, Judah became his holy one, sanctuary, Israel his dominion. The sea saw them and fled. Jordan ran backward. Mountains skipped like rams, hills like sheep. What alarmed you, O sea, that you fled? Jordan, that you ran backwards? Mountains that you skipped like rams, hills like sheep? Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flinty rock into a fountain.
All right. Does this now, otherwise they seem like random facts when you're reading some of these Psalms. Does it now sound more cohesive to you and make more sense? I hope it does. I hope so. Let me talk about Chatzi Hallel, because the next two Psalms, when we do a half Hallel, when we do a shorter version, these next two Psalms are the ones that are changed. On Rosh Chodesh, we do half a Hallel. In the last 6 days of Passover, we do a half a Hallel. Now, there's really, okay, there's a couple reasons for this. Number one, Hallel originally, as I said to you, was only recited on the Shlosh Regalim, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, and Hanukkah. It wasn't recited on Rosh Chodesh. And on the last 6 days, I'm going to give you two reasons. One, as I said before, it was a way of the rabbis saying there's a little less joy because life was taken. But there's really actually a more pragmatic reason. That is the midrashic reason. There's a pragmatic reason. If you look at the Bible, when it describes Shavuot, Shavuot has no Chol HaMoed. It has the first day. That's all there is. On Sukkot, you have listings of specific offerings that were made every day of Sukkot. On Passover, all you have is offerings and rituals around the first day. And all right. And so there was no special temple ceremony. And so when there was no Hallel to complement them. And so there's no Hallel on the last 6 days of Pesach. All right. Now let's read this psalm. We're going to do the entire psalm as if it's. Let's pretend it's Sukkot. Okay, we're going to read the whole thing. All right. Jennifer, do you have the text? Would you read Psalm 115 for us?
Okay. Not for us, Adonai, not for us, but for yourself. Win praise through your love and faithfulness. Why should the nations say, where is their God? Our God is in heaven, doing whatever he wills. Their idols are silver and gold made by human hands. They have a mouth and cannot speak, eyes and cannot see. They have ears and cannot hear, a nose and cannot smell. They have hands and cannot feel, feet and cannot walk. They cannot make a sound in their throat. Their makers, all who trust in them, shall become like them. If the house of Israel trust in Adonai, God is their help and their shield. Let the house of Aaron trust in Adonai, God is their help and their shield. Let those who revere God trust in Adonai, God is their help and their shield. The Lord is mindful of us, he will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel, he will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, small and great alike. May the Lord increase your numbers, yours and your children's also. May you be blessed by the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. The heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth he gave to man. The dead cannot praise the Lord, nor any who go down into silence. But we will bless the Lord now and forever. Hallelujah.
Thank you. Thank you. So the last psalm talks about the events at Sinai as they were happening, Sinai and the Exodus. This psalm talks about the long-term effects of those events. This is post those events. Most of the scholars attribute this psalm to the exile period between the first and second temple, or after the second temple seems to be in construction period. So it's exile or post-exile. because it reflects a period of national difficulty when nations are oppressing them, but also when they seem to find assurance in the world. So it's as if God is starting the process of the healing after the exile. Okay? Let's take a specific look here. Verse number 1. Not for us, Adonai, not for us, but for yourself. So God is asked to do favors, not because we deserve them, but in order to glorify God's name. Again, this whole concept of Hallel, of praising God. It's not that we deserve, it's because you are wonderful. You are the best. Your hair smells terrific. All right, whatever you want to say, that's God. Okay, it's all wonderful. Some of the prayer, the first two words are lo lanu, not for us, Adonai, not for us, to you, but for yourself. Lo lanu. Some of the commentators note that the numerical value of lanu is 86, the same equivalent number if you take the name of God, Elohim. Their play on this is, it would be Lo Elohim, not for Elohim, but Adonai. Now, what's going on here? You need to know that each of the names of God has historically been attributed with a particular quality. Elohim is the quality of justice, and Adonai is the quality of mercy. And so what they're saying is, don't punish us with strict justice as Elohim would do, but rather have mercy upon us as the quality of Adonai would have. All right? It's a midrash, because lo lanu, it just really says for us. But they like to play with the numbers, so I'm giving you a drash based on that. Verse 4, this is where it starts out. Let's see. Their idols are silver and gold made by human hands. The idol worshippers adorned their idols with precious metals, making them into valuable commodities, which is an ironic mockery of the fact that the idols themselves are worthless. Okay? The idolaters, accustomed to visible carved figures, then mockingly question the existence of the imageless God of Israel. All right? We can see our gods, you can't. And it goes on to say they have mouths and cannot speak, eyes they cannot see, ears they cannot hear, a nose they cannot smell, hands they cannot feel, feet and cannot walk. They cannot make any sound bigronom in their throats. All right? These illustrations emphasize the complete impotence of man-made idols. These idols even lack the five senses that human beings have. Okay? They're not even the equivalent of human beings, never mind a God. And God's power is contrasted with that impotence. Israel's God dwells in the heavens, real but unseen, while the gods of other nations are seen but not real. Okay? Unlike God, who has no physical representation but can act within the world, the idols have physical features but cannot act. That's what's going on here. The next verse then turns and says, their makers, all who trust in them, shall become like them. Those who make idols and worship them are as powerless as their idols. It's in the form of a curse. It's may the idol worshippers turn to lifeless wood and stone like the idols that they have fashioned. There's a curse here. They are worthless, and so are those who make them and worship them. Okay. Verse 11, let the house of Israel trust, and then you have let the house of Aaron trust, and then let those who revere God trust. All right. You have three different groups that are being portrayed here. Israel is the large population, though they get the tribes. The Kohanim get no land, but they are the priests who permeate throughout all of Israel. And who is this revere God group? This is the multitudes. This is the multitudes of non-Jews who joined the Jewish people when they left Egypt and ultimately bonded themselves to the people. Some of the early rabbis identified these as the converts to Judaism. And as a result, if that's the case, many believe this psalm was composed in Second Temple times, and Rashi supports this. Why? If you took a course in Jewish history with me in the Melton program, one of the things we talked about is that the entire option and the entire concept of conversion doesn't exist in Judaism until the time of Ezra. There is no possibility. You didn't need to go through a conversion. You just, you basically do what Ruth does. I'll go with you. I'll join along on your journey. Your God's going to be my God. That's it. Conversion as a concept of buying into a religious way of life is not until the time of Ezra, which is Second Temple times. And so as a result, a number of the rabbis say this psalm itself was composed in Second Temple times. All right, the last two verses. The dead cannot praise the Lord. Lo hametim hallelujah. Nor can they go down, nor any who go down to silence. All right, but we, anachnu nivarich, we will bless the Lord now and forever. For the rabbis, the cosmos really had three levels: heaven, the abode of God; earth, actually biblical. This is not rabbinic. This is biblical. Heaven, the abode of God; earth, the level assigned by God to human beings; and three, Sheol, we talked about this, below the earth, the domain of the dead. Those who go down into silence are the dead, because as we talked about in Sheol, there is no existence. One cannot praise God in Sheol. It is only va'anachnu nivarech, we who will praise. All right. King David says, just to make that point, allow us to live, allow us to thrive, so that our existence can proclaim your glory. It is only in life that we can proclaim God's holiness. And what, to some extent, what is saying here, who is it referencing? Who did we talk about before? We talked about the idol worshipers. It's as if the idol worshipers are the equivalent of the dead. They cannot praise God. Until one becomes a worshiper of God as opposed to an idol worshiper, your value, your ability to praise is non-existent. All right. So once more, I want to go back and read this psalm. All right, Rona, do you have the text? Just shake your head yes or no. Okay. You need to unmute. You need to unmute. Rona, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Now it
There
is.
you go.
Okay.
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 Please.
So we're doing 115. So not for us, Adonai, not for
No,
us.
116.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're right. No, I apologize. You're right.
I
115.
thought
You're
this
right.
is
You're
the one
right.
I just made notes on.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Not for us, Adonai, not for us, but for yourself when praised through your love and faithfulness. Why should the nations say, where is their God? Our God is in heaven, doing whatever he wills. Their idols are silver and gold made by human hands. They have a mouth and cannot speak, eyes and cannot see. They have ears and cannot hear, a nose and cannot smell. They have hands and cannot feel, feet and cannot walk. They cannot make a sound in their throat. Their makers, all who trust in them, shall become like them. Let the house of Israel praise in Adonai. God is their help and their shield. Let the house of Aaron trust Adonai. God is their help and their shield. Let those who revere God trust in Adonai. God is their help and their shield. The Lord is mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, small and great alike. May the Lord increase your numbers, yours and your children's also. May you be blessed by the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. The heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth he gave to man. The dead cannot praise the Lord, nor any who go down into silence, but we will praise the Lord now and forever. Hallelujah.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
things about the idols remind me of the Midrash about Abraham and the idols.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly what they say in that.
Yep.
What he says to his family, his father.
Right. Right. The rabbis put words in the mouth of Abraham, taking this back, the whole concept of the psalm. Absolutely. All right, we're going to do one more psalm. We'll do 4 of the 6. In contrast to this previous psalm, which concerns the nation as a whole, the next psalm is strongly individualistic. As the people has cause to praise God for deliverance from the sufferings of captivity, the next one is a personal experience of God's saving power, a return from what we think is a suffering to health. All right? It's a story of faithfulness in the worst of circumstances. The Talmud offers yet another lens on this, explaining that this psalm describes the day of final judgment, Tchiyat HaMetim, when the dead will rise. The average person, all right, who are neither completely wicked nor completely righteous, will be saved because God will hear their cries and forgive them, and in gratitude they'll sing, I love God, for God hears my voice and supplication. So with that, let's see, let's read the next one. Let's see, Suzanne, do you have the text? No, okay, no. All right, Lisa, do you have the text?
Yes, I do.
All right, would you read Psalm 116 for us?
I love knowing the Adonai listens to
It
my
should say
cry.
that. It should say, I love knowing that Adonai.
I love knowing that Adonai listens to my cry of supplication. Because God does hear me, I will call on God in days of need. The cords of death encompassed me. The grave held me in its grip. I found myself in distress and despair. I called on Adonai. I praised that God would save me. Gracious is Adonai and kind. Our God is compassionate. Adonai protects the simple. I was brought low, and God saved me. Be at ease once again, my soul, for Adonai has dealt kindly with you. God has delivered me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I shall walk before Adonai in the land of the living. I kept my faith even when greatly afflicted. Even when in anguish I cried out, mortals cannot be trusted. How can I repay Adonai for all his gifts to me? I will raise the cup of deliverance and invoke Adonai by name. I will honor my vows to Adonai in the presence of all his people.
Okay. So let's take this apart a little bit. Verse 1 and 2. You have here, I love knowing that Adonai listens to my cry of supplication, because God does hear me. I will call on God in days of need. Now, first of all, this could simply be another example of biblical poetry, saying the same thing twice. All right. Nonetheless, the commentators like to find meaning, whether or not it's there. Al-Sheikh says that in the first verse, Yishma, listens, God hears, implies a distance, where the second verse, it says, Chita ozen, to incline the ear, connotes a proximity and a more closer attention. And from this, he draws the lesson. At first, God merely hears the prayers of Israel. But as our relationship with God grows more intimate, he pays attention. It's through repetition of relationship. It's through ongoing prayer that we ultimately get the ear of God. He may hear it, but paying attention is a whole nother level. Verse 3 then goes on, the cords of death, all right, encompass me. Many understand this as an indication that whoever the speaker of this psalm is recovering from a near fatal illness. But there are other ways to understand this. In Psalm 18, a similar formulation refers to dangers of battle. So it could also be that someone has survived a battle, not just an illness. So there are different ways one can understand this, and we don't know. Verse 9 says, God has delivered me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I shall walk before Adonai in the land of the living. So first of all, walking before Adonai is language that echoes the command to Abraham, walk in my presence and be tamim, to be wholehearted. Okay, that's common. The other thing is to note, what's this land of the living? Now, it can be taken literally, but rabbis don't like to do that often. They play. A number of sources identify the land of Israel as the land of the living because the dead are destined to be resurrected there. And for this reason, generations have yearned to be buried in holy soil, in Israel. When you go to a funeral today, we take soil from the land of Israel and we throw it into the grave as well. There's a midrash, this is ultimately midrash, suggesting that those who are interred in foreign soil, such as those of us living here, will roll to Israel through subterranean passages prior to resurrection. Okay. Anybody's taking that literally, we can have a discussion at another time. Okay. Sentence 10. It finishes up here. It says, I kept my faith even when greatly afflicted. So whatever suffering happened, the person has still kept his faith. Even when in anguish I cried, mortals, kol ha'adam kozeh, mortals cannot be trusted. I just want to point out structurally, if you listen, this line is said out loud, we finish a paragraph with it. When I say this line, kol ha'adam kozeh, you'll see me get very quiet. It's not something I want to emphasize. So I'll say, you'll hear me say, Hemanti ki adaber ani aniti meod, ani amarti bechotzi, kol adam kozev. I de-emphasize that. Nonetheless, there's a point going on here, and the petitioner is recognizing the unreliability of human nature, number one, as well as mortality. But there's no permanence to relying on human beings because they will die. And therefore, it only works to trust in God. And it goes back to verses 1 and 2, where it says, I will depend on God, I will call upon God, because in the future, because of past experiences that I've had where God has saved me. Children rely on parents because they know in the past they've taken care of them. That's the reality. So there's a trust that has been built, and therefore we rely on God. One cannot rely on human beings because not every human being will fulfill everything they say. None of us fulfill everything we say. And two, we die. As much as we can rely on our parents, assuming the normal nature of sequence of things, they will die before us. And then what? Okay. Verse 13, you should hear an echo. It says, I will raise my cup of deliverance and invoke Adonai by name. It's Kos Yeshuot Esa Uveshem Adonai Ekra. Anybody know where else you hear this? Havdalah. It's in the opening paragraph. Kos Yeshuot Esa Uveshem Adonai Ekra. It's the introduction to the blessings. Okay? There's a libation celebrating the psalmist. There's a party going on. He's returned to life, whether it be illness or whatever it is. There's a party going on here. And it's like a toast to God, invoking God's name to publicize God's great deeds. We are celebrating God with a symbol of joy, and that is the wine that's here. The next verse, 14. Let me just see what I have here. A couple things. Number one, nidarai ladonai. Does anybody know what the word nidarai? Does it strike a bell from anywhere else in the liturgy? Neder, nidrei, kol nidrei, all of my vows. Here it's saying, I will vow. I will honor my vows to Adonai. All right? And and where? In the presence of all his people. In that verse, you have praise through words like Kaddish and Kedusha are best done in the presence of all his people when there's a community present, when you have a minyan. It's verses like this that the rabbis use to declare certain prayers required the presence of others to be recited. So with that in mind, Leslie, would you read Psalm 116 for us one more time?
Yes. I love knowing that Adonai listens to my cry of supplication. Because God does hear me, I will call on God in days of need. The cords of death encompassed me. The grave held me in its grip. I found myself in distress and despair. I called on Adonai. I prayed that God would save me. Gracious is Adonai and kind. Our God is compassionate. Adonai protects the simple. I was brought low and God saved me. Be at ease once again, my soul, for Adonai has dealt kindly with you. God has delivered me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. I shall walk before Adonai in the land of the living. I kept my faith even when greatly afflicted. Even when in anguish, I cried out, mortals cannot be trusted. How can I repay Adonai for all his gifts to me? I will raise the cup of deliverance and invoke Adonai by name. I will honor my vows to Adonai in the presence of his people. Grievous in Adonai's sight is the death of the faithful. I am your servant, born of your maidservant. You have released me from bondage. To you will I bring an offering and invoke Adonai by name. I will honor my vows to Adonai in the presence of all his people, in the courts of the house of Adonai, in the midst of Jerusalem. Hallelujah.
Okay. So if you remember, I said at the beginning, the Talmud identified 5 themes. We covered 4 of them: the Exodus, the splitting of the sea, the giving of the Torah, and the revival of the dead. The last 2 psalms, first of all, the next psalm is only 2 lines. It's the shortest psalm. It's also the shortest chapter in the Bible. And then the last one will deal with the difficulties preceding the Messianic age. What I wanted, let's unmute everybody.
Unmute.
You're unmuted.
I want to do 2 things. One is just let you know that the same course is being taught on Sunday mornings right now. So this coming week on Sunday, we'll be continuing on with going back to the Amidah and going on from there. So 10 o'clock on Sundays, if you want to do it again. I don't know anybody why you'd want to do that, but you're welcome to do so. 2 is, as I said at the beginning, starting in August at 3 different times each week, I will offer a lecture on, for example, on Unatana Tokef on a Sunday morning, on a Tuesday evening, and then on a Thursday at noon. I will do the same thing with 3 other prayers. I'll teach it 3 times a week so that everybody has access to it if they wish before the high holidays.
Great.
Third thing I want to do is just open up to questions. This is not a time to tell me how much you love the course. I appreciate that. I want to hear any questions on any of the liturgy that we went through along the way. Joan, go ahead.
Yes, I didn't know what book you were using. This is the first time I tuned in, and I was using my Siddur, but it wasn't right.
What do you mean it wasn't?
What are you using?
I was using the translations from that Siddur.
From Shalom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What page would it have been on?
So I think it's somewhere in like 136, 137, somewhere in that
Well,
range.
I had that, but it wasn't.
I thought I typed it right out of there.
Well,
See,
I didn't
even
see
though
the
it's not-
same words. I didn't
Okay.
see the same words that were being read.
I'm not sure. Okay, I apologize for that, but I thought, even though I don't happen to like the translations within this text, because it's more flowery than accurate, I used it because that's what people would be familiar with. I thought I got it, and if I didn't, I apologize.
No, well, I don't know. That's okay. It's the first time I tuned in. So,
Okay. Well,
but not the
welcome.
last.
Good. Anybody else? Any questions on anything we covered in this course?
I have a question. What were the 5 holidays that you mentioned at the beginning?
This is for Hallel. So it's Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, Hanukkah, and Rosh Chodesh. Okay. There are those who suggest that Hallel is recited on Hanukkah for a completely non-theological reason. And that is that the Jews were at war during Sukkot and weren't able to observe Sukkot that year. And so when they got to Hanukkah, they said it at that point, and they created, how long is Sukkot? 8 days. They created a holiday of Hanukkah for 8 days and said Hallel like they would have had they been able to do on Sukkot. That's a historical lens, not a theological lens. What else?
I have a quick technical question.
Ed?
Could you, I mean, I didn't print out the things, it's a long story. Is there any way you could give us the pages in Sim Shalom that you're using?
Yeah, depending on which prayer, but yeah. All right,
Sure, yeah.
Let me grab the Siddur and I'll tell you exactly. Hold on. All right. Hallel, I'm sorry, can be found on 133.
Yes.
133 is Hallel.
Okay, well, I'm not going to go and get mine now, but it'll make it easier.
Yeah, I get
it
that.
might depend which Sim Shalom you have.
My concern and the reason I tend to these texts is I'm not sure. I assume not everybody has a copy of Sim Shalom at home, and I didn't want people not to have it.
Well, I happen to have one so I can follow the services on Saturday.
Good.
Well, I have the old one, so my pages never match.
Right. The translations have changed. Right.
Well,
thank you.
But no, the page numbers never match on Saturday either, because it's got
true.
the morning service and it's just total different.
It's the old one has more in it.
It has much more in it. Yeah.
Right. Where in the newer one they split it into 2 books.
That's what I thought. That's why the pages are so far off.
Right. Anybody else? Sandy, I thought I saw your hand go up. Is there?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, particularly Psalm 114. Remember, David was a warrior. And Psalm 114 sounds like okay, guys, don't mess with us because we've got God on our side. It's a warning to the enemy. But the other way you could look at it is talking to his troops. Is okay, you have to have faith because God's on our side. The other observation is that King David had lots of ups and downs in his life. And particularly in Psalm 116, it really sounds like a person, comes to me across as a person who's really had some tough times in his life. And I've been able to persevere because of you. I've been near death. I've been near exile. All of these things, Lord, you have saved me because, boy, I needed it.
Yeah, you're right. And just to share with you, the last Psalm, which we didn't cover, a lot of it is really a big party. The first 5 Psalms are describing all the things we've gone through. And the last one, there's almost a ritual party going on. There's an invitation of the people to come into the temple. And there's this celebration of God. You're right. Some of it is war. And you've got David in the whole war. You've got a personal. It's national and it's personal. Jennifer.
Okay, 2 things. The first is just an observation. And it's like when we were reading the 116th Psalm, I noticed that it seemed to echo in a lot of ways the 23rd Psalm. It's a lot of the same message.
Yep.
The same concepts.
Yeah, and it's very personal. Yes.
Yeah.
It's individualistic. Yeah.
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 And then the other thing is just a question, and another, and it's like when we say them on Passover during the Seder, we say the first two, then the 113 and the 114 before the
Right. It's
before
split.
then we split it, and I was wondering about that.
I don't know the logic to that. I'm gonna suggest that there's probably a pragmatic reason, and then a theological reason got added later. And I'm just willing to bet people got tired of it. Let's get to the food.
That's an element.
I'm sure a theological reason has been superimposed upon it, but I'd be willing to bet there's a very pragmatic reality.
Let's face it, the food is a big element in our practice, which makes it a little difficult now.
Yep. Anything on any of the other prayers we did
Cantor?
during the year?
Cantor?
Yes, Betty.
Yes, I don't know if we have time for this, or perhaps it's a short answer. And this is, I don't know whether to call it a philosophical or theological concern, and it's kind of like general, and it's the fact of God taking care of us as a people as opposed to the personal. It's like some people believe that God intervenes in their everyday life, in their everyday doings.
Right.
First of all, we have free will, so that has to be taken into account. But then, how much time does God have to worry about each one of us individually when there is COVID going around and all kinds of problems? And so it's the general versus the particular. How do we deal with that?
So for much of Jewish history, look, I'm not going to have the perfect answer here. I'm telling you that up front. All right. For much of Jewish history, as I said this a couple times, the smallest unit was the Jewish community. When it talks about reward and punishment, it only works in the collective. It doesn't work in the singular. That doesn't mean there isn't an element of personal as well. I don't know how to distinguish between the two. I have a humorous response to the second question. If you ever saw the movie Bruce Almighty, in that case, God, it's a goofy movie in which a human being gets this week of godlike powers and becomes God. And he spends his day on the computer trying to answer all the prayers in the world. And it's impossible. All right? They're coming in by the thousands per second. All right? All I can say to you is if we understand God as having no limits, then it becomes possible. Beyond that, I can't comprehend it. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're not making it any easier.
Well, if I could understand God, by definition, I'd be God. And since I can tell you for a fact I have lots of flaws, I ain't there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cantor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always.
Hopefully we'll see you in August. August the holidays.
So is this the last one on Thursday mornings?
Yes, it is for a while.
Okay.
Until the middle of August, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sherry Ann.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.